The galactic community had always considered humans to be peculiar creatures. They were neither the strongest nor the fastest species among the star-faring civilizations. Their technology lagged behind the Zenthari by several centuries, and their military prowess paled in comparison to the warrior clans of Chromath. Yet there was something about humans that made even the most ancient species pause and reconsider their initial assessments. Captain Varix of the Zenthari exploratory fleet had observed humans for 3 standard cycles now, and he still couldn't quite understand them. They possessed an inexplicable tendency to befriend creatures that would sooner tear them apart than acknowledge their existence. The Zenthari archives contained dozens of reports about humans domesticating predators on their homeworld, creatures with fangs and claws that could easily end a human life. The humans called these predators cats and dogs, and they lived with them in their dwellings as companions. This fundamental aspect of human nature would prove significant in ways that would reshape interspecies relations across 17 star systems, though Varix didn't know it yet. The catalyst for this change was currently trudging through the crimson forests of Drakkar Prime, completely unaware of the destiny that awaited her. Mira Chen was not supposed to be on Drakkar Prime at all. The human colony ship Providence had experienced a catastrophic navigation failure 3 months prior, scattering its escape pods across this uncharted region of space. Mira's pod had crashed on Drakkar Prime, a planet that existed in the records of exactly 0 civilizations. The world was a testament to nature's raw power, filled with massive fungi that towered hundreds of meters into the violet sky and crystalline rivers that hummed with some unknown energy. She had survived by doing what humans do best: adapting. The edible plants were scarce, but identifiable through trial and careful observation. She had constructed a shelter from the fallen branches of the massive fungi, weaving them together with the tough vines that grew in abundance. Her emergency beacon transmitted continuously, a small hope that someone might eventually hear its call through the void of space. On this particular morning, Mira was checking her hunting traps near the eastern ridge when she heard it. The sound was unlike anything she had encountered in her 3 months of isolation. It was a low, rumbling groan that seemed to vibrate through the very ground beneath her feet. The noise carried pain within it, a quality that transcended species and language. Something was suffering. Every survival instinct Mira possessed screamed at her to return to her shelter. Unknown creatures making unknown sounds were not things to be investigated. They were things to be avoided. Yet Mira found her feet carrying her toward the sound, rather than away from it. This was the human condition that so baffled the other species of the galaxy. Curiosity mixed with compassion in equal measure, often overriding the basic survival programming that kept most species alive. The source of the sound was beyond a thick cluster of the towering fungi. Mira pushed through the bioluminescent undergrowth, her hand-crafted spear held ready. The groaning grew louder with each step, and beneath it, she could hear labored breathing. Something large, something very large. She emerged into a clearing and stopped dead in her tracks. The creature before her defied easy description. It was roughly the size of an old Earth elephant, but that was where any similarity to familiar animals ended. Its body was covered in overlapping scales that shimmered between deep blue and midnight purple. 4 powerful legs ended in claws that had carved deep gouges into the stone beneath it. A long, serpentine tail thrashed weakly behind its bulk. But it was the head that captured Mira's attention. The creature's head was distinctly draconic, with an elongated snout and curved horns that swept back from its skull. Its eyes, half closed in pain, glowed with an inner amber light. And protruding from the side of its snout, buried deep into the soft tissue, was a massive crystalline spike. The spike pulsed with a sickly green light, and the flesh around it had turned an ugly gray color, some kind of poison or infection. The dragon beast's eyes snapped open as it sensed Mira's presence. It tried to rise, to present some kind of threatening posture, but collapsed back to the ground with a groan. The amber glow in its eyes fixed on her, and Mira saw something she recognized immediately: intelligence. This was no mere animal. This was a thinking, feeling being. "Easy," Mira said softly, holding up one hand while slowly lowering her spear. "I'm not here to hurt you." The creature rumbled deep in its chest. Whether that was a warning or simply an acknowledgement, Mira couldn't tell. She took a slow step forward. Then another. The dragon beast watched her but made no move to attack. Perhaps it was too weak. Perhaps it recognized that this small creature posed no real threat, or perhaps something else entirely stayed its claws. Mira circled slowly, keeping her movements smooth and predictable. She had learned long ago that sudden motions frightened animals, and frightened animals did unpredictable things. As she moved, she got a better look at the spike. It was definitely some kind of weapon, possibly a projectile from another creature. The crystalline structure suggested it wasn't natural. The gray discoloration spreading from the wound told her that time was a factor. "That looks like it hurts," Mira said, continuing to speak in a calm, low voice. "I don't suppose you'd let me help with that?" The dragon beast rumbled again, and this time it sounded almost like a question. Its eyes tracked Mira as she completed her circle and ended up at its injured side. This close, she could see the creature's flanks rising and falling with labored breaths. This close, she could smell the acrid scent of infected flesh. Mira knelt slowly beside the creature's head. She was now well within range of those powerful jaws. If the dragon beast decided she was a threat, or worse, a meal, there would be nothing she could do. But something in those amber eyes held her fear at bay. She saw pain there, yes, but also a kind of weary resignation. The creature was dying, and it knew it. "I'm going to try to help," Mira said. "This is going to hurt, probably a lot, but that spike needs to come out." She reached out slowly, telegraphing her intention with every movement. Her hand came to rest on the scales near the wound, and she felt the dragon beast flinch. The scales were warm to the touch, almost hot. She could feel the creature's rapid heartbeat thrumming beneath the surface. The spike was buried deep, at least 15 centimeters into the tissue. The crystal was smooth but irregular, with sharp edges that had probably done additional damage going in. Removing it quickly would cause a lot of bleeding. Removing it slowly would prolong the agony. There were no good options, only less terrible ones. Mira gripped the spike firmly, feeling the strange coolness of the crystal against her palm. The dragon beast tensed beneath her touch, and a low growl built in its throat. But it didn't pull away. It didn't snap at her. It simply waited, those amber eyes fixed on her face. "On 3, Mira said. 1. She pulled with all her strength on 1, yanking the spike free in a single motion. The dragon beast roared, a sound that echoed across the clearing and sent several small creatures fleeing from the nearby undergrowth. Its tail thrashed violently, carving a deep furrow in the stone. But its head remained still, and its jaws, which could have easily encompassed Mira's entire torso, stayed closed. Dark purple blood welled from the wound, thick and viscous. Mira tossed the spike aside and immediately pressed her hands against the injury, applying pressure. The blood was hot, almost burning against her skin. The dragon beast shuddered, but held still. I know, Mira murmured. "Just hold on. Let me help." She needed something to clean the wound and something to pack it with. Her medical supplies in the shelter were limited. But she had managed to identify several plants with antiseptic properties. Of course, those plants were a 20-minute hike away, and she had no way of knowing if this creature's biology would respond the same way to treatments that worked on her. Mira made a decision that would have horrified the Providence's medical officer. She pulled off her outer shirt, tearing it into strips. It wasn't sterile, but it was cleaner than leaving the wound open. She packed the cleanest strips against the injury, maintaining pressure while using the others to tie a makeshift bandage around the dragon beast's snout. The creature endured this treatment with remarkable patience. Its eyes never left Mira, and she found herself talking to it continuously as she worked. She told it about Earth, about the oceans and mountains she would probably never see again. She told it about her family, about her younger brother who had wanted to be a xenobiologist. She told it about the colony they had been traveling to, about the dream of a new home among the stars. By the time she finished, the sun had shifted position in the sky, and the clearing was bathed in the reddish light of Drakkar Prime's afternoon. The dragon beast's breathing had stabilized somewhat, and the bleeding had slowed to a trickle. It was still in terrible condition, but at least it wasn't actively dying anymore. Mira sat back, exhausted. Her hands were stained purple with the creature's blood, and her arms ached from maintaining pressure on the wound. The dragon beast watched her with those luminous amber eyes, and then it did something that Mira would never forget. It lowered its massive head until its snout was inches from her, and it exhaled softly. The breath was warm and carried a scent like cinnamon and smoke. Then, with obvious effort, the creature extended its long tongue and gently licked Mira's blood-stained hands. "You're welcome," Mira whispered, feeling tears prick at her eyes. She didn't know if it was relief or exhaustion, or the simple joy of connection after months of isolation. Maybe it was all three. The dragon beast rumbled, a softer sound than before, and closed its eyes. Within moments it was asleep or unconscious. Mira couldn't tell which. She stood on shaky legs and looked down at the creature that had trusted her enough to let her help. She should return to her shelter. She should distance herself from this unknown being. She should prioritize her own survival. Instead, Mira gathered fallen branches and began constructing a simple windbreak around the sleeping dragon beast. If she was going to do this, she was going to do it properly. Humans, after all, didn't do things halfway. 3 days passed. Mira divided her time between her shelter and the clearing where the dragon beast lay. She brought water from the crystalline stream, though she had no idea if the creature drank water or required it. She brought fruits and fungi that she knew to be edible, leaving them near the creature's head. She changed the bandages daily, noting with satisfaction that the gray discoloration was receding, and healthy purple-blue scales were growing back around the wound. The dragon beast slept through most of this, waking only briefly to observe Mira's ministrations before drifting off again. Healing, Mira suspected, required energy that the creature was conserving. On the 4th day, Mira arrived at the clearing to find the dragon beast awake and sitting upright. The bandages had been carefully removed and lay in a neat pile to the side. The wound on its snout was now covered with fresh scales, slightly lighter in color than the surrounding tissue, but clearly healed. "Well, hello there," Mira said, stopping at the edge of the clearing. "You're looking much better." The dragon beast regarded her silently, and Mira felt a flutter of uncertainty. Now that it was healthy, would it see her as prey, as a threat? She hadn't really thought this through beyond the immediate act of helping an injured creature. The dragon beast rose to its feet in a fluid motion that belied its massive size. It was even more impressive standing at full height. Those amber eyes studied Mira with an intensity that made her want to step back, but she held her ground. Running would accomplish nothing against a creature that could probably cross the clearing in 3 bounds. Then the dragon beast did something unexpected. It lowered its head in what could only be described as a bow. It was a gesture of respect, of acknowledgement, of gratitude. When it raised its head again, Mira saw something new in those eyes. Recognition. Bond. "I'm Mira," she said, feeling slightly foolish but unable to stop herself. She pressed a hand to her chest. Mira! The dragon beast rumbled, a sound that started deep in its chest and seemed to resonate through the clearing. Then it took a step forward, closing the distance between them. Mira's heart hammered, but she didn't move. The creature lowered its head again, bringing its snout level with Mira's face. This close, she could see the pattern of scales, each one slightly different from its neighbor. She could see the amber eyes with their slit pupils, so alien, yet somehow warm. Slowly, carefully, Mira reached out and placed her hand on the dragon beast's snout, just above where the spike had been. The scales were smooth and warm beneath her palm. The creature's eyes closed, and it leaned gently into her touch. "I'll call you Kaida," Mira whispered. "It means little dragon in an old Earth language, though you're anything but little." Kaida rumbled again, a sound that Mira was beginning to interpret as contentment. The bond was formed, though neither of them fully understood what it would mean. A human girl and a dragon beast, connected by an act of compassion on a forgotten world in an unmapped corner of the galaxy. Above them, unnoticed by either Mira or Kaida, a Zenthari scout ship passed through the upper atmosphere. Its sensors detected the human's emergency beacon and marked the location for investigation. Captain Varix, reading the preliminary report, noted with interest that the beacon was originating from Drakkar Prime, a world known to be inhabited by the deadly Drakkar dragons. He authorized a landing party, curious to see if any human could have survived 3 months in such a hostile environment. What he would discover would challenge everything the Zenthari thought they knew about humans and their peculiar gift for befriending the deadliest creatures in the galaxy. The universe was about to learn an important lesson about humanity. You don't need to be the strongest or the fastest or the most technologically advanced to earn respect. Sometimes all you need is the courage to reach out to another being in pain and the compassion to help, even when doing so puts you at risk. Mira had demonstrated both, and Kaida, in accepting that help, had made a choice that would echo across the stars. The fierce protector had found her charge, and the galaxy would never be quite the same. The Zenthari landing party consisted of 5 members, each chosen for their specific expertise. Captain Varix led the team personally, something he rarely did for simple rescue operations. But something about this situation intrigued him. A human surviving for 3 months on Drakkar Prime defied probability. The planet's designation in their database was clear: Class 4 Death World. Extreme caution advised. Lieutenant Kessa, the team's xenobiologist, scanned the surrounding forest as their shuttle descended. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple Drakkar dragon signatures in this region, at least 20 within a 5-kilometer radius of the beacon." "And the human?" Varix asked. "Still transmitting. Life signs stable." Kessa paused, her antenna twitching in confusion. "Sir, there's a large Drakkar signature within meters of the human's location. Close proximity." Varix felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. They were likely too late. The human had probably been killed recently, and a dragon was now investigating or consuming the remains. It was the most logical explanation, though it brought him no satisfaction. He had hoped to meet this resilient human. The shuttle landed in a clearing approximately 100 meters from the beacon's source. The team disembarked with weapons ready, not that their plasma rifles would do much against a full-grown Drakkar dragon. The creature's scales could withstand ship-grade weaponry. Personal arms were more for psychological comfort than practical defense. "Spread out, but maintain visual contact," Varix ordered. "Remember, dragons are apex predators. If we encounter one, we retreat to the shuttle immediately. No heroics." The team moved through the bioluminescent undergrowth with practiced caution. Varix had led dozens of expeditions to dangerous worlds, and he had survived by respecting the local fauna and never underestimating them. Drakkar dragons, in particular, commanded respect. The Zenthari had tried to colonize this system 70 cycles ago. That colony no longer existed. The forest opened into another clearing, and Varix held up one hand to halt the team. What he saw there would stay with him for the rest of his long life, a moment so fundamentally strange that it rewrote his understanding of what was possible. A human female, small by most species standards, sat cross-legged near a primitive shelter. She was working on something, weaving plant fibers together with quick, practiced movements, and beside her, close enough to touch, lay a massive Drakkar dragon. The creature's head rested on the ground near the human, its eyes half closed in what could only be described as contentment. As Varix watched, frozen in disbelief, the human reached over absently and scratched the dragon behind one of its curved horns. The dragon's tail swept lazily back and forth, and a rumbling purr emanated from its chest. "By the first stars," Kessa breathed. "Is that human petting a Drakkar dragon?" The human's head snapped up at the sound of Kessa's voice. She scrambled to her feet, dropping her weaving. The dragon's eyes opened fully, and it raised its head with a fluid motion. The amber glow in its eyes intensified as it focused on the Zenthari team. "Wait!" the human shouted, holding out both hands. "Don't run! Kaida, easy girl! They're not threats!" Kaida, apparently, did not agree with this assessment. The dragon rose to its full height and placed itself between the human and the Zenthari team. A low growl built in its throat, and the temperature in the clearing seemed to rise. Small wisps of smoke curled from Kaida's nostrils. "Weapons down!" Varix ordered immediately. His team complied without hesitation, lowering their plasma rifles and raising their hands. "We mean no harm," he called out in Galactic Standard. "We received your distress beacon. We're here to help." The human approached the dragon and placed a hand on its foreleg. She was speaking to it, her voice too low for Varix to hear, but the effect was immediate. The dragon's aggressive posture eased slightly, though it continued to watch the Zenthari with obvious suspicion. "Sorry about that," the human said, stepping out from behind the dragon. "She's protective. I'm Mira Chen, colonist from the Providence." "Captain Varix of the Zenthari Exploratory Fleet," Varix replied, his mind still trying to process what he was witnessing. "Ms. Chen, would you mind explaining this?" He gestured vaguely at the dragon. Mira glanced back at Kaida with an expression that Varix recognized despite the differences in species. It was affection, pure and simple. "This is Kaida. I found her injured about a week ago, helped her out. We've been keeping each other company since then." "You helped a Drakkar dragon?" Kessa interjected, stepping forward despite her training. "You rendered medical aid to one of the most dangerous predators in this sector?" "She was hurt," Mira said simply, as if that explained everything. And perhaps for humans, it did. Varix approached slowly, keeping his movements non-threatening. Kaida tracked him, but didn't growl. Apparently, Mira's acceptance was enough to grant temporary tolerance. "Ms. Chen, we need to evacuate you from this planet. Your colony ship is searching for survivors, but I'm not sure our shuttle can accommodate both you and your friend." "Then I'm not going," Mira said immediately. "Ms. Chen, please be reasonable. You can't stay on Drakkar Prime indefinitely. Your supplies—" "I've been managing fine for 3 months," Mira interrupted. "I can manage longer if I need to. I'm not abandoning Kaida." Kaida rumbled at the sound of her name, and Mira reached up to pat the dragon's side. The gesture was casual, intimate, the action of someone long accustomed to the presence of a large animal. Varix had seen similar behavior from the Krillian nomads who rode the great desert beasts of their homeworld. But those nomads spent generations breeding their mounts for docility. Mira had befriended a wild apex predator in a matter of days. "There has to be another way," Lieutenant Kessa said. She was staring at Mira and Kaida with undisguised fascination. Captain, this is unprecedented. A human bonding with a Drakkar dragon? The scientific community needs to study this. I'm not a lab experiment, Mira said sharply, and neither is Kaida. Of course not, Varric said quickly, shooting Kessa a warning look. But Ms. Chen, consider the implications. If your methods could be replicated, if humans could bond with other dangerous species. I didn't use a method, Mira said. I saw a creature in pain and helped it, that's all. That's all, Varric repeated softly. He looked at this small human who had accomplished something his people considered impossible, and he felt the weight of centuries of Zenthari assumptions crumbling. Ms. Chen, what if I could arrange transport for both you and Kaida? Would you be willing to leave then? Mira's expression shifted to surprise. You could do that? Our cargo ships could accommodate a Drakkar dragon. It wouldn't be comfortable for anyone involved, but it's possible. Varric made a decision that would require him to justify himself to multiple levels of command. I want to take you to the Providence refugees. Your people deserve to know you survived. And perhaps the galaxy deserves to see what you've accomplished here. Mira looked at Kaida, then back to Varric. I need to think about this. Can you give me some time? We can wait until tomorrow morning, Varric said. But Ms. Chen, there's something you should know. The Providence survivors have been relocated to a joint colony on Talus 6. It's a shared world, multiple species coexisting. If you bring Kaida there, it will cause complications. Complications, Mira repeated. You mean people will be afraid? Terrified would be more accurate, Kessa said. Drakkar dragons have a reputation, a well-earned one. Mira's jaw set in a stubborn line that Varric was beginning to recognize. Then we'll just have to show them there's nothing to fear, won't we, girl? Kaida chose that moment to yawn, displaying rows of teeth that could easily shear through durasteel. Varric suppressed a shudder. Nothing to fear. Right. The Zenthari team made camp at a respectful distance from Mira's shelter. Varric watched as the human went about her evening routine, with Kaida following her like an enormous deadly shadow. The dragon helped in its own way, using its tail to knock down fruit from the tall fungi, allowing Mira to gather them easily. When Mira prepared her meal over a small fire, Kaida settled nearby, its body forming a windbreak against the evening breeze. It's like watching someone live with an active fusion reactor, Kessa murmured. Beautiful, but absolutely terrifying. Indeed, Varric agreed. Lieutenant, access the Zenthari cultural database, find everything we have on human domestication of Earth fauna. I want to understand how their species developed this ability. Hours later, Kessa presented her findings. Sir, it's not an ability. It's psychology. Humans seem to possess an instinctive drive to care for other creatures, even predators. Their homeworld history is filled with examples. They befriended wolves, turning them into dogs. They domesticated cats, small predators that technically serve no practical purpose. There are records of humans keeping venomous reptiles as companions, feeding and caring for them despite the danger. But why? Varric asked. What evolutionary advantage does this provide? Near as I can tell, none. In fact, it's often disadvantageous. Humans have been killed by the very animals they tried to help, yet they persist in trying. The leading theory among xenopsychologists is that it's a side effect of their social bonding mechanisms. Humans are so attuned to recognizing emotion and distress in others that they can't seem to ignore it, even in non-human species. Varric thought about Mira hearing Kaida's groans of pain and choosing to investigate despite the danger. He thought about her pulling that poisoned spike free, putting herself at incredible risk to help a creature that could have killed her easily. She helped because she couldn't bear not to, he said slowly. Essentially, yes, Kessa confirmed. And from what I've observed, the Drakkar dragon recognized that compassion and bonded with her because of it. Dragons are intelligent, sir. perhaps more intelligent than we've given them credit for. Kaida understood that Mira helped her, and she's responding with loyalty. Can other species replicate this? Varix asked. Kessa's antenna drooped. Unknown. The human capacity for empathy across species barriers seems to be unusually strong. We Xanthari are communal but primarily within our own kind. The Chromath value strength above compassion. The Lixians are too logic-focused. Humans might be unique in this regard. The next morning, Mira approached the Xanthari camp with Kaida at her side. Varix's team had already packed and prepared the shuttle for departure. The captain had sent a message to his ship requesting a cargo vessel be prepared, though he hadn't yet explained why. "We'll go with you," Mira announced without preamble, "but I have conditions." "Name them," Varix said. "Kaida isn't cargo. She's a passenger. She gets treated with respect and dignity." "Agreed. If anyone tries to hurt her or take her from me, the deal is off. We'll find our own way." "I'll ensure her safety personally," Varix promised. "And when we get to Talus 6, I want time to introduce her to people properly. No just dropping us in the middle of the colony and hoping for the best." Varix smiled. "Miss Chen, I think you'll find that your arrival will be handled very carefully. The Providence survivors will want to see you. But yes, we'll coordinate the introduction of Kaida." Mira nodded, then looked back at her shelter. Varix followed her gaze and realized she was memorizing it. This place had been her home for 3 months, the site of her survival and her unexpected friendship. Leaving it meant leaving a piece of herself behind. "We should go," Mira said quietly, "before I change my mind." The shuttle ride to the orbiting Xanthari ship was tense. Kaida barely fit in the cargo area, and she was clearly unhappy about the confinement and the strange noises. Mira sat beside her the entire time, one hand on the dragon's side, speaking in soft, soothing tones. The Xanthari crew gave them a wide berth. When they docked with the main ship, Captain Varix escorted Mira and Kaida personally to the prepared cargo bay. The space had been cleared and reinforced, with restraints ready to secure the dragon during faster-than-light travel. Kaida took one look at the restraints and growled ominously. "We need to secure her for FTL," Varix explained. "The gravitational fluctuations during jump could injure her otherwise." "She's not going to like this," Mira warned. "Kaida, hey, look at me." The dragon's attention fixed on Mira. "We need to do this so we can get you somewhere safe. Somewhere you'll be with other dragons, maybe. Would you like that?" "Other dragons?" Kaida rumbled, a questioning sound. Mira guided her to the restraint points, and to the amazement of the gathered crew, the massive dragon allowed herself to be secured. She kept her eyes on Mira the entire time, trusting in a way that defied her predatory nature. "I'll stay with her during the jump," Mira said. "That's not safe," Varix protested. "Humans can experience severe disorientation during FTL. And you think leaving her alone, confused and scared, is better?" Mira challenged. "I'll stay." Varix saw the determination in her eyes and knew arguing was pointless. "Very well. But you'll need to be secured as well." The jump to Talus 6 took 6 standard hours. When Varix checked on them afterward, he found Mira unconscious from jump sickness, slumped against Kaida's side. The dragon had curved her body protectively around the small human, her head positioned to block Mira from view. When Varix entered, Kaida lifted her head and watched him with intense focus. A warning, a promise. "She's all right," Varix said softly, holding up his empty hands. "Just sleeping. She'll wake soon." Kaida rumbled low, then carefully repositioned herself to better support Mira's weight. The gentleness with which the massive predator handled her human companion spoke volumes about the bond between them. Varix retreated from the cargo bay, already composing his report to the Galactic Council. They needed to understand what he had witnessed. Humans possessed something rare in the galaxy, the ability to bridge the gap between species through simple compassion. In a universe often divided by fear and misunderstanding, that was a gift beyond price. When Mira woke, groggy and disoriented, the first thing she saw was Kaida's amber eyes watching over her. The dragon nuzzled her gently, and Mira wrapped her arms around Kaida's snout in a gesture of affection that would have horrified anyone unfamiliar with their bond. "We're almost there," Varrix's voice came over the intercom. "Talus 6 in 30 minutes. Ms. Chen, are you ready to show the galaxy what humans are capable of?" Mira looked at Kaida and smiled. "As ready as I'll ever be." She had no idea that news of her arrival had already spread through the refugee colony. The Providence survivors were buzzing with speculation. A dragon on Talus 6? Impossible. But Captain Varrix was known for his reliability, and his report had been specific. Mira Chen alive and accompanied by a bonded Drakkar dragon. The colony administrators were in a panic, trying to prepare for the arrival of an apex predator. Security forces were on high alert, xenobiologists were scrambling to set up observation posts, and the human refugees were simply eager to see one of their own again, alive and well. What none of them expected was how much Mira had changed. She had left Earth as a colonist, hopeful and naive. She was returning as something else entirely, a bridge between species, a testament to human compassion, and the companion to a fierce protector who would challenge everything they thought they knew about coexistence. The landing platform at Talus 6 was surrounded by more security than Mira had ever seen in one place. Zenthari guards stood in formation, their plasma rifles charged but pointed at the ground. Chromath warriors, their chitinous armor gleaming under the colony's artificial sun, formed a secondary perimeter. Even a few Lixian peacekeepers were present, their energy shields already activated and shimmering in the air. All of this for her and Kaida. "This is excessive," Mira said as she watched the preparations through the shuttle's viewport. Captain Varrix stood beside her, his expression carefully neutral. "This is careful. There's a difference. The colony administrators want to ensure everyone's safety, including Kaida's. There are over 50,000 beings in this colony, Ms. Chen. Many of them have never seen a Drakkar dragon. Some species have ancestral memories of being prey to large predators. We must proceed slowly." "Kaida isn't going to hurt anyone," Mira said, but even as the words left her mouth, she felt uncertainty creep in. The dragon had been gentle with her, protective and loyal. But Mira was one person on an empty world. This was different. This was crowds and noise and dozens of species Kaida had never encountered. How would the dragon react? As if sensing Mira's tension, Kaida pressed her snout against Mira's side. The dragon's amber eyes regarded her with what Mira had come to recognize as concern. She reached up and scratched behind Kaida's horns, drawing comfort from the familiar gesture. "We'll be fine," Mira murmured, trying to convince herself as much as the dragon. "Just stay close to me, girl. Don't bite anyone unless they really deserve it." Kaida rumbled, a sound that might have been agreement or amusement. With dragons, it was sometimes hard to tell. The shuttle descended slowly, giving the security forces time to adjust their positions. Through the viewport, Mira could see a small group waiting behind the military perimeter. Humans, her people. She recognized a few faces even from this distance. Marcus Webb, who had been the Providence's chief engineer. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, the medical officer. And there, at the front of the group, was her friend Jamie, tears already streaming down her face. "I'll establish a neutral zone," Varrix explained. "You and Kaida in the center, security at a distance, and your people permitted to approach slowly and in small numbers. Does that sound acceptable?" "It sounds like I'm a zoo exhibit," Mira said, but she nodded. "But yes, okay. Let's do this." The shuttle landed with barely a whisper of sound, a testament to Zenthari engineering. The cargo ramp lowered, and Mira felt her heart hammering in her chest. She had survived 3 months alone on a death world. She had pulled a poison spike from a dragon's face. She had bonded with a creature that could have eaten her, and yet somehow, walking down this ramp toward her own people felt like the most terrifying thing she had ever done. "Come on, Kaida," she said softly. "Time to meet the neighbors." They emerged from the shuttle together, and Mira heard the collective intake of breath from the assembled crowd. Kaida was magnificent in the colony's bright light, her scales shimmering through shades of blue and purple as she moved. She held her head high, every inch the apex predator, and her amber eyes swept across the gathered beings with intelligent assessment. The security forces tensed, weapons rising slightly. Kaida noticed immediately, and a low growl built in her throat. Smoke curled from her nostrils. "Easy," Mira said, placing a hand on Kaida's foreleg. "They're just scared. Can you blame them? You're pretty intimidating." "Girl." The dragon's attention shifted to Mira, and the growl subsided. The message was clear to everyone watching. The dragon deferred to the human. It was a display of trust that defied natural law, and it rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. "Mira!" Jamie's voice cut through the tension. Her friend pushed forward, stopped only by a Chromath warrior's raised hand. "Let her through," Captain Varix ordered. "But slowly, and announce your intentions clearly." Jamie approached with visible caution, her eyes flicking between Mira and Kaida. "Mira, oh my God, we thought you were dead. We mourned you, and you're here with a... Is that really a dragon?" "Her name is Kaida," Mira said, smiling despite the tears building in her own eyes. "She's my friend. Kaida, this is Jamie. She's also my friend. Be nice." Kaida regarded Jamie with those penetrating amber eyes, then did something that made the entire security force flinch. She lowered her head until her snout was level with Jamie's face, close enough that the human could feel the dragon's warm breath. Jamie froze, every muscle locked in place. "She's deciding if she likes you," Mira explained. "Just don't run, and try not to smell too afraid." "Not to smell afraid?" Jamie repeated faintly. "Right. Easy." For a long moment, dragon and human stared at each other. Then Kaida exhaled softly through her nostrils, a gesture Mira had learned meant acceptance, and pulled back. Jamie let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "She says you're okay," Mira translated. "That's high praise coming from her." "I'm honored," Jamie said weakly. Then she laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "Mira-chen, only you could crash land on a death world and make friends with an apex predator. Only you." More humans began to approach, each introduction carefully managed by Varix's security team. Kaida tolerated them with varying degrees of patience, though she never moved more than a few meters from Mira's side. Dr. Okonkwo was particularly fascinated, asking dozens of questions about Kaida's biology and the healing process. Marcus wanted to know how Mira had survived for 3 months. "The same way humans have always survived," Mira said. "Adapt and make friends with the locals." A Lixian administrator approached, flanked by 2 Chromath escorts. Her name was Sarix, and she projected an aura of calm authority that seemed to soothe even Kaida's wariness. "Ms. Chen, on behalf of the Talus 6 Colonial Council, I welcome you. We've prepared accommodations for both you and your companion, though I confess the situation is unprecedented." "Where do you want us?" Mira asked. "There's a clearing on the eastern edge of the colony. It's adjacent to the human residential sector, but has sufficient space for Kaida. We've established monitoring stations purely for safety purposes." "Monitoring stations," Mira repeated. "You mean you want to watch her?" "We want to understand her," Sarix corrected gently. "And to ensure that coexistence is possible. You must understand, Ms. Chen, This colony has never hosted a Drakkar dragon. Many of our residents are from prey species. Their fear is instinctive and difficult to overcome. Kaida chose that moment to yawn, displaying her impressive array of teeth. Serex's escorts shifted nervously, and one placed a hand on his weapon. "Don't," Mira said sharply. "She's just tired. It's been a long journey. Can we please just go to this clearing? Kaida needs space and quiet." The procession to the eastern clearing was surreal. Mira walked beside Kaida, surrounded by a moving bubble of security forces, while curious colonists lined the streets to watch. She saw wonder on some faces, terror on others. A group of young Zenthari children pointed and whispered excitedly. An elderly Chromath made a warding gesture as they passed. The clearing was larger than Mira expected, a carefully maintained space with soft grass and a small pond. Someone had even installed a shelter, though it was clearly designed for something much smaller than Kaida. The dragon investigated the space thoroughly, her tail swishing as she catalogued every scent and sound. "It's not Drakkar Prime," Mira said quietly, "but it's not bad." "What do you think, girl?" Kaida rumbled, then walked to the pond and drank deeply. Apparently, the clearing met with her approval. Over the following weeks, Mira and Kaida became the most famous residents of Talos 6. Xenobiologists from 3 different species requested permission to study their bond. News agencies wanted interviews. The Galactic Council sent official observers to assess whether humans should be classified as a bridge species capable of facilitating interspecies cooperation. Through it all, Mira simply lived her life. She found work in the colony's botanical division, using skills she'd developed on Drakkar Prime to identify and cultivate new plant species. Kaida accompanied her when possible, though the dragon's size made some areas inaccessible. The humans, at least, grew comfortable with Kaida's presence. The dragon was a common sight near the human residential sector, often surrounded by brave children who had decided that petting a dragon was the coolest thing imaginable. Other species took longer to accept Kaida. There were incidents. A Chromath warrior challenged Kaida to combat, believing the dragon's presence was an insult to his warrior honor. Kaida had simply pinned him with one claw and held him there until he yielded, demonstrating both her power and her restraint. A group of Zenthari activists demanded Kaida be removed from the colony, citing safety concerns. They changed their tune after Kaida rescued a Zenthari child who had fallen into a ravine, carefully lifting the terrified youngster in her jaws and returning her unharmed to her parents. Slowly, acceptance grew into understanding. Understanding grew into appreciation. The colonists began to realize that Kaida was not a threat, but a presence, intelligent and complex. She had preferences and moods. She displayed humor, playing games with the human children who were brave enough. She showed grief when a colonist she had grown fond of passed away, refusing to eat for 2 days. 6 months after her arrival, Mira stood before the Talos 6 Colonial Council. Beside her, Kaida's bulk filled half the council chamber. The dragon had been specially invited to attend, though many council members were visibly nervous about her presence. "The question before us," Administrator Serex said, "is whether to classify Kaida as a sentient being with full rights under colonial law, or as an animal companion subject to different regulations." "She's sentient," Mira said immediately. "I know she can't speak Galactic Standard, but she understands. She thinks, she feels, she makes decisions. She deserves the same rights as anyone else in this chamber." A Chromath counselor, a female named Threx, leaned forward. "Ms. Chen, you understand what you're asking? If we grant your dragon citizenship rights, it sets a precedent across the entire galactic community. Every bonded animal, every domesticated creature could theoretically claim the same status." "I'm not asking for citizenship rights for every animal," Mira clarified. "I'm asking for recognition of Kaida specifically. She's proven herself. She's saved lives. She's learned to coexist peacefully with dozens of species. She's earned this. And if we deny the request? Threx asked. Kaida rumbled, a deep sound that resonated through the chamber. It wasn't a threat, not quite, but it was certainly a statement. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Then Kaida and I will leave, Mira said calmly. We'll find somewhere else, somewhere that recognizes what she is. Serix held up a hand before the discussion could devolve. There will be no need for that. I've reviewed the evidence, read the testimonials, observed the bond between you and Kaida. I see no reason to deny her recognition. She looked around the chamber. All in favor of granting Kaida of Drakkar Prime provisional citizenship status within Talos 6 colony? The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Kaida became the first non-sapient species to be granted such recognition in the history of the galactic community. The decision sent shockwaves through multiple governments and sparked philosophical debates that would continue for years. For Mira and Kaida, the decision meant something much simpler. They were home, both of them, recognized and accepted. A year after the Providence disaster, Captain Varix returned to Talos 6. He found Mira in the botanical gardens, working on a new hybrid plant that showed promise for food production. Kaida was nearby, basking in a patch of sunlight and watching over Mira with lazy contentment. "Ms. Chen," Varix greeted. "You're looking well." "Captain," Mira stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "I didn't know you were visiting. What brings you back?" "Official business mostly. But I wanted to see how you and Kaida were managing." He studied the dragon, noting how she had filled out since he last saw her. "She looks healthy." "She's thriving," Mira said proudly. "We both are. The colony has been surprisingly welcoming." "Not so surprising," Varix said. "Your presence here has changed things, Mira. May I call you Mira?" "Of course. You've shown us something we didn't know was possible. Bonds between species that transcend instinct and fear. We Zenthari pride ourselves on our scientific understanding, but you've revealed something we missed. Compassion as a bridge." Mira looked at Kaida, remembering that first day in the clearing on Drakkar Prime. "I just helped someone who needed it. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Varix said gently. "They wouldn't. That's what makes humans special. That's what makes you remarkable. The Galactic Council is discussing establishing a new division focused on interspecies bonds and cooperation. They want humans to lead it. They want you specifically." "Me?" Mira laughed. "I'm a botanist and a crash-land survivor. I'm not a diplomat." "You're a bridge," Varix said. "Between humans and dragons, between fear and understanding. The galaxy needs more bridges, Mira. Will you consider it?" Before Mira could answer, Kaida rose and approached. The dragon had grown accustomed to Varix over their many interactions, and she allowed him to place a hand on her snout in greeting. The Zenthari captain smiled at the gesture. "I'll think about it," Mira said finally. "But wherever I go, Kaida goes with me. We're a package deal." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Varix assured her. That evening, Mira sat with Kaida on the edge of the clearing, watching the binary sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. The dragon's head rested in Mira's lap, a gesture of complete trust and affection. From the colony behind them came the sounds of life. Laughter, conversation, the bustle of beings from a dozen species coexisting in harmony. "What do you think, girl?" Mira asked, scratching behind Kaida's horns. "Should we help more people understand what we have? Show them that friendship can cross any boundary?" Kaida rumbled. A sound Mira had learned meant contentment and agreement. The dragon's eyes reflected the sunset, twin amber flames in the growing darkness. "Yeah," Mira said softly. "I think so too." The story of the human girl who pulled a spike from a dragon's snout and gained a fierce protector had already spread through the galactic community. But that was just the beginning. In the years that followed, Mira and Kaida would travel to dozens of worlds, mediating disputes, facilitating first contacts, and demonstrating the power of compassion to bridge even the widest divides. Other humans would follow Mira's example, forming bonds with creatures previously thought untamable. The Zenthari began studying human empathy as a serious field of scientific inquiry. The Chromath, who valued strength above all, came to understand that there were different kinds of strength. The Lixians, logical to a fault, learned that some truths couldn't be calculated but only felt. And through it all, at the center of this quiet revolution, was a human girl and her dragon. Not the strongest or the most powerful, but connected by a simple act of kindness that had rippled across the stars. On distant Drakkar Prime, in the clearing where Mira had first pulled that spike free, the local dragons had begun to change. They remembered the small being who had helped their kin, whose scent had been carried back by Kaida during her brief visits home. They watched the skies with new awareness, wondering if more of these strange, compassionate creatures might come. And in council chambers across the galaxy, leaders of 100 species grappled with a new reality. Humans were not remarkable for their strength or their technology or their military might. They were remarkable for something far more powerful, their ability to see past differences, to extend compassion across every boundary, and to build bridges where others saw only walls. Mira had pulled a spike from a dragon's snout. In doing so, she had pulled out something else, the spike of fear and misunderstanding that had separated species for millennia, and in its place, she had planted something that would grow far beyond anything she could have imagined. Hope, connection, the possibility of a galaxy bound not by treaties and trade agreements, but by genuine friendship and understanding. As darkness fell completely on Talus 6, Mira and Kaida remained at the clearing's edge. The human and her fierce protector, comfortable in their silence, secure in their bond. Tomorrow might bring new challenges, new opportunities to build bridges, but tonight they simply existed together. Two beings from different worlds who had found in each other something the entire galaxy was still learning to understand. The fierce protector and her human, the bridge builder and her dragon. Together, they had shown the universe a simple truth, that the greatest strength lies not in weapons or technology, but in the courage to reach out a hand to another being in pain and say, "Let me help." And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that being reaches back.